Hi class 630. I told you today I'd be taking you to the expansive outdoors. Little change of scenery. Today we are going to learn about what Lee Botts is writing about and how he feels a little bit more about the situation with his dad. We're starting on page 111 and we're beginning with Sunday, March 25th. I keep thinking about Dad and how lonely he sounded and wondering what happened to the pizza boy. I don't like to think about Dad being lonesome, but I don't like to think about the pizza boy cheering him up either. Tonight at supper, Beans and Frank's, I got up my courage to ask Mom if she thought Dad would get married again. She thought a while and then said, "I don't see how he could afford to. He has big payments to make on the truck, and the price of diesel oil goes up all the time. And when people can't afford to build houses or buy cars, he won't be hauling lumber or cars." I thought this over. I know that a license for a truck like his costs over $1,000 a year. "But he always sends my support payments," I said, "even if he is late sometimes." "Yes, he does that," agreed my mother. "Your father isn't bad by any means." Suddenly, I was mad and disgusted with the whole thing. "Then why don't you two get married again?" I guess I wasn't very nice about the way I said it. "Mom looked me straight in the eye because your father will never grow up," she said. I knew that was all she would ever say about it. Tomorrow they give out the Young Writer's Yearbook. Maybe I will be lucky and get to go to have lunch with the famous author. Monday, March 26th. Today was the greatest day of my life. When our class went to the library, I saw a stack of yearbooks and could hardly wait for Miss Neely to hand them out. When I finally got mine and opened it to the first page, there was a monster story, and I saw I hadn't won first prize. I kept turning. I didn't win second prize, and I didn't win third or fourth prize either. Then I turned to another page and saw honorable mention, and under it, "A Day on Dad's Rig" by Lee M. Botts. There was my title with my name under it in print, even if it was mimeographed print. I can't say I wasn't disappointed because I hadn't won a prize. I was really disappointed about not getting to meet the mysterious famous author. But I liked seeing my name in print. Some kids were mad because they didn't win or even get something printed. They said they wouldn't ever try to write again, which I think is pretty dumb. I haven't heard that real authors sometimes have their books turned down. I figured you win some, you lose some. Then Miss Neely announced that the famous author the winners would get to have lunch with was Angela Badger. The girls were more excited than the boys because Angela Badger writes mostly about girls with problems like big feet or pimples or something. I would still like to meet her because she is, as they say, a real live author, and I've never met a real live author. I am glad Mr. Henshaw isn't the author because then I would be really disappointed that I didn't get to meet him. Friday, March 30th. Today turned out to be exciting. In the middle of second period, Miss Neely called me out of class and asked if I would like to go have lunch with Angela Badger. I said, "Sure. How come?" Miss Neely explained that the teachers discovered that the winning poem had been copied out of a book and wasn't original, so the girl who had submitted it would not be allowed to go on, and I would like to go in her place. Would I? Miss Neely telephoned Mom at work for permission, and I gave my lunch to Barry because my lunches are better than his. The other winners were all dressed up, but I didn't care. I have noticed that authors like Mr. Henshaw usually wear old plaid shirts in the pictures on the back of their books. My shirt is just as old as his, so I knew it was okay. Miss Neely drove us in her own car to the Holiday Inn, where some other librarians and their winners were waiting in the library. That's a hotel. Then Angela Badger arrived with Mr. Badger, and we were all led into the dining room, which was pretty crowded. One of the librarians, who was a sort of super librarian, told the winners to sit at a long table with the sign that said reserved. Angela Badger sat in the middle, and some of the girls pushed to sit beside her. I sat across from her. Super librarian explained that we could choose our lunch from the salad bar. Then all the librarians went off and sat at the table with Mr. Badger. There I was, face to face with a real live author, who seemed like a nice lady, plump with wild hair, and I couldn't think of a thing to say because I hadn't read her books. Some girls told her how much they loved her books, but some of the boys and the girls were too shy to say anything. Nothing seemed to happen until Mrs. Badger said, "Why don't we all go help ourselves to lunch at the salad bar?" What a mess. Some people didn't understand about salad bars, but Mrs. Badger led the way and we helped ourselves to lettuce and bean salad and potato salad and all the usual stuff they lay out on the salad bars. A few of the younger kids were too short to reach anything, but the bowls on the first rows. They weren't doing too well until Mrs. Badger helped them out. Getting lunch took a long time, longer than in a school cafeteria. And when we carried our plates back to our table, people at other tables ducked and dodged as if they expected us to dump our lunches on their heads. All one boy had on his plate was a piece of lettuce and a slice of tomato because he thought he was going to go back for the pot roast and the fried chicken, or the roast beef. We had to straighten him out and explain that all we got was salad. He turned red and went back for more salad. I was still trying to think of something interesting to say to Mrs. Badger while I chased garbanzo beans around my plate with a fork. A couple of girls did all the talking, telling Mrs. Badger how they wanted to write books exactly like hers. The other librarians were busy talking and laughing with Mr. Badger, who seemed to be a lot of fun. Mrs. Badger tried to get some of the shy people to say something without much luck, and I still couldn't think of anything to say to a lady who wrote books about girls with big feet or pimples. Finally, Mrs. Badger looked straight at me and asked, "What did you write for the yearbook?" I felt myself turn red and answered, "Just something about a ride on a truck." "Oh," said Mrs. Badger, "so you're the author of A Day on Dad's Rig." Everyone was quiet. None of us had known the real live author would have read what we had written, but she had, and she remembered my title, my story. I just got honorable mention," I said, but I was thinking, she called me an author, a real live author called me an author. "What difference does that make?" asked Mrs. Badger. "Judges never agree. I happen to like A Day on Dad's Rig because it was written by a boy who wrote honestly about something he knew and he had strong feelings about. You made me feel what it was like to ride down on a steep grade with tons of grapes behind me. But I couldn't make it into a story," I said, feeling a whole lot braver. "Who cares?" said Mrs. Badger with a wave of her hand. "She's the kind of person who wears rings on her forefingers. What do you expect? The ability to write stories comes later, when you have lived longer and have more understanding." A Day on Dad's Rig was splendid work for a boy your age. You wrote like you, and you did not try to imitate someone. This is one mark of a good writer. Keep it up. I noticed a couple of girls who had been saying they wanted to write books exactly like Angela Badger exchanged embarrassed looks. "Gee, thanks," was all I could say. The waitresses began to pluck down dishes of ice cream. Everyone got over being shy and began to ask Mrs. Badger if she wrote in pencil or on the typewriter, and did she ever have books rejected, and were her characters real people, and did she ever have pimples when she was a girl, like the girl in the book, and what did it feel like to be a famous author? I didn't think answers to those questions were very important, but I did have one question I wanted to ask, which I finally managed to get in at the last minute when Mrs. Badger was autographing some books people had brought. "Mrs. Badger," I said, "did you ever meet Boyd Henshaw?" "Why, yes," she said, scribbling away in someone's book. "I once met him at a meeting of librarians where we were on the same program." "What's he like?" I asked over the head of a girl crowding up with her book. "He's a very nice young man with a wicked twinkle in his eye," she answered. "I think I have known that since the time he answered my questions when Miss Martinez made us write to an author." On the ride home, everybody was chattering about Mrs. Badger this and Mrs. Badger that, and I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to think. A real live author had called me an author. A real live author had told me to keep it up. Mom was proud of me when I told her. The gas station stopped pinging a long time ago, but I wanted to write all this down while I remembered. I'm glad tomorrow is Saturday. If I had to go to school, I would yawn. I wish Dad was here so I could tell him all about today. We're going to stop here on page 121, and I'm going to give you a little tour of the outdoors. It's a beautiful day outside. I hope that you had a great time with the read aloud, and we will discuss what happened in these chapters. See you later.